Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and science of running and the stuff that we put on our feet. I am here with Dr. David Salas, and I'm Nathan Brown. I will be hosting. We are excited because today we're going to kind of do something that we did for the first time maybe 2 months ago or a month ago, where we all took turns ranking shoes based off of softness. We're taking that concept, we're applying it to a different feature of shoes, which I'll talk about in a second. But before we do that, David, you just had your first year anniversary for your wedding or for your marriage. Where'd you guys go? What'd y'all do?
Yeah, it was great. What's that?
And did the pandas in the background have anything to do with it?
Yeah, that was a card. Happy anniversary.
They're cute.
I
like them.
Life mates, and then it has a couple puns in there and a nice handwritten note. Yeah,
that's cool.
Then this little box here too is actually an anniversary gift. It's a little pop-up box that has some photos over the last year in there.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Is that something Amber did for you or that you did for Amber?
Amber did for me.
Oh, that's nice of her. That's cool.
So that'll have its home right there for right now, and then I might find another home for it. We'll see.
Great.
But yeah, we went to Monterey, California, not Mexico, and it was great. Did some whale watching, went to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, saw Big Sur for the first time, kind of did all that stuff, Pebble Beach, So
fun.
It was cool. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, glad you're back. Glad that we get to now chat. I know this is more fun than being out on an anniversary trip, is chatting with me about shoes. So what we are going to be doing tonight is going to be taking 10 different running shoes that we have ran in over this past year, both in 2023 and 2024. And we're going to be ranking them based on what we believe is our best upper, or the best one that worked for us. And so before we start this whole ranking system, what we want to do first is have a conversation about the purpose of uppers and how we think about how quality an upper is. So, David, when we think about uppers, what are they for? Why are they on shoes? What are we doing there?
Yeah, so the upper essentially is usually a mesh or a woven knit material that goes over the top of the platform. Its goal, all of them should do it, is keep your foot on the platform and keep it from shifting around or doing anything funny. That's probably the most simple way that I can say that, but it basically keeps your foot on there so that nothing else happens.
Perfect. And I think what we've found is that within our team, and then obviously extended beyond to patients that we've worked with and then any other runner friends that we know, what upper works best for you is going to be super unique because of your foot shape. It's going to depend on the climate that you're in. Some are thicker, some are thinner. So for me in the winter, having a super thin upper is like the worst thing. And then in the summer, having a really thick upper is the worst thing. So it really depends on what you end up using it for. And so we're going to talk about some of those things. A lot of the shoes that we picked today to rank are kind of in that trainer category. So just kind of keeping that in mind, that these aren't specific for racing or anything like that. These are going to be more trainer-like, but there's a lot of individuality, depending on what sort of conditions you may have. We have an article out that Matt wrote on Haglund deformities, which is a bony overgrowth in the heel. If you have something like that, how the heel counter is constructed, like the heel counter meaning the part that is either rigid or soft around the heel, that's going to matter a little bit more than for someone who doesn't have irritability back there. So just know that we understand that there's a lot of individuality when it comes to this, and we are ranking them based on what have worked best for us as people. And we're going to talk about each one as we go along. So what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you all the 10 shoes in no particular order, so that if you've ran in them, you can pause this episode and you can write down all of them that we're going to be reviewing, and you could do your own ranking system and see how much you line up with us. Also, David and I don't know each other's lists, so it's going to be a surprise. The 10 shoes that we got, we have the Tri-Nusa from Asics, the newest one. We have the New Balance Balos. We have Super Blast 2 from Asics, Boston 12 from Adidas, Topo Spectre 2, Skyward X from Hoka, the Mach 6 from Hoka, the Triumph 22, and the Cloud Monster Hyper. I think I just listed 10 shoes. So If you want to pause this, you can rewind that and get them all written down. And then we're going to go forward and we are going to be doing our ranking system. Also, before we start our ranking, just a reminder that we've been able to partner with Scratch. And so they are sponsoring this episode. And if you want 25% off of your first order from Scratch, and they have a bunch of hydration stuff. They have cookbooks. They've got different fuel for your runs. You have the cookbook, right?
I do have the cookbook.
Yeah, sweet. That's
nice.
Something I want to pick up. I think it would be fun. They've got hydration flasks and things like that. Feel free to pop over to their website. You can get 25% off using DOR24. All right. You ready, David?
Let's do it.
All right. So the way that we're going to do this is we have ranked our 10 in order from least comfortable or least best performing to best performing for ourselves. We've also broken them down into 4 different tiers. And the 4 tiers that we have is the 4th tier is the lowest tier. And these need some work. These are uppers that didn't work for us and they would need to be tweaked to be able to work well for us. Tier 3 is this is going to need some work, but there's a couple elements that make this a promising upper, but it also needs some work. Tier 2 is like, this is a good upper. There's a lot that I would like here. I would continue to run in the shoe, but if they tweaked this, it would be great. And then tier 1 are those great uppers that just worked really well for us. So let's start with our tier 4. David, how many do you have in your tier 4?
I have 3.
You have 3. Okay, I have 2. So why don't you start? You can give your 10, 9, and 8 for your tier 4.
Yeah, I also just want to preface this too, like this in no way has any indication on the quality of the shoe or the ride of the shoe or my experience in it. So just because it's on the bottom tier there, I might still actually like running in the shoe for certain reasons or uses. It's just strictly talking about upper and fit in regards to myself. So number 10 for me, and I think this does kind of fall in that that preface I just said. I actually said the Saucony Triumph 22. I live in California. It's very warm here. It's a very plush upper. And there's a lot on it. And it's a little bit wide in the heel, midfoot, forefoot, a lot of space. And my foot isn't that big, like as far as volume goes. And so my foot does kind of move around in it a little bit. Those that need a little bit more volume and space, I'm sure they love it. I mean, it's actually a pretty cozy material that goes around there. And I feel like the material itself doesn't like overly stretch or isn't crazy unstable or anything. I just think for my own needs and my own foot, it just kind of misses the mark there. So, I mean, if they were designing specifically for me, they can make it a little bit thinner, kind of like lock down like that volume down just a little bit and then kind of increase that heel midfoot security. But again, I think the masses, that's going to be a shoe that I think that works for a lot of people. So, but it's just not really my choice for my premium trainer at this point. Number 9, again, another shoe I like a lot, but there's just something about it. And it's the Hoka Mach 6. It's a very snug, low volume shoe. I like it for the track, but it's just like outside of the track use, I have a hard time finding myself using that for 10 plus miles for like a long tempo run or long runs. Like, sure, I could do it, but I think there's just other shoes out there that are more comfortable that are in the same category. Yeah. And so just a little bit more volume. I mean, the security on it's really good. I think just giving it just a little bit more space. But it locks you down really good. And if you're trying to corner hard and run fast, like it can do it for sure. And then the other one is number 8, the Forward Experience. And that probably could be number 9 from Ultra. And that it doesn't fit that bad, but I have that foot that kind of works with all these shoes. I feel like,
yeah, so you've got the magic foot.
I'm like splitting hairs here, to make this list, but I found the heel fit on it to be a little funny, like the padding on the inside of the heel collar, and it kind of just had ever so slightly a little heel rise, and then the midfoot was pretty tight. And then the forefoot I didn't find too bad. I know it's a little bit more slim than other Ultras that are out there. It's not quite as voluminous or spacious, but I didn't really have any issues in the forefoot there. More so just kind of the odd heel fit and the midfoot. Yeah. Once it was on, it was, I guess, kind of fine because the tongue kind of really holds you in. So that volume's a little bit lower there too.
Right.
But yeah, that would probably be my tier 4 shoes, is just cleaning up those uppers a little bit. But again, all fine and dandy trainers. I think, honestly, our whole list here is all pretty good shoes.
That's true. And I really liked the caveat you made about how the upper rating doesn't equate to a shoe rating. Like there are shoes that are lower on my list that I enjoy running in more than some that are higher on the list for this. And that was the other thing I had a hard time with making this list, was that sometimes the upper, if it's not paired with the right midsole, it's more problematic. But like we'll talk about, and that will become apparent with some of the shoes that we end up talking about. But if you've got something super snug on a super plush thing that doesn't line up, or if it's too loose on a very high stack plush thing and you're not stable on that platform, that makes it more problematic. So there's some matching between midsole and upper that needs to happen, and we're trying to parse that out just from like a comfort and fit perspective. That said, I actually do have 3. I misread. I have 3 in my tier 4 as well. My number 10 is the New Balance Balos. Are you saying Balos or Balos?
I've been saying Balos.
Balos. All right. So this shoe,
I don't know.
I kind of mentioned this at our last episode, but I just found that this shoe fits short, and there's just a lot of tapering towards the forefoot. And when I say tapering, I mean like it starts like kind of a little bit more voluminous, and then it just like shuts down on your toes.
Yeah, it does go quick.
When I put it on, I can just feel the pressure kind of where this kind of thicker plastic is around the forefoot. That's like a toe guard. I can feel that on my toes immediately when I go in. So I think it's just a little bit too low volume, tapers a little bit too much. You can even see it tapers on the outsides as well, on the lateral medial side. So because of that, that's a big part. The other thing that we haven't talked about a while on the pod, but I'm also kind of a tongue snob.
You are a tongue snob.
I am a tongue snob when it comes to shoes.
You are a true tongue snob.
I've never been a fan of tongues that are super stretchy, and that's kind of like how they function. And this is a very stretchy upper that's gusseted, a stretchy tongue that's gusseted. It just doesn't have the right amount of padding in there for me to think it's comfortable. And so I just think that this upper is just a little bit odd, and it's more padded in the heel than it is up in the forefoot. Did you just drop something?
I just tried to slingshot a pen with the tongue.
Did it work?
Semi. It got off the shoe, but it didn't go very far.
That's the fact that you can even try that tells you how stretchy it is. Yeah, so I just feel like there was some mismatch of like the padding of the heel and then how snug it is and how thin and non-stretchy the upper is in the forefoot. I think that if this was a stretchier material, that tapering wouldn't matter as much, but because it's not stretchy, that was problematic. So that was my number 10. Number 9 was one that you had in yours as well. I can't remember if yours was 9 or 8, but it's the Hoka Mach 6, which is for like moderate distances has been one of my favorite shoes to just train in this year from a midsole, but the upper is just unreasonably like snug. It didn't need to be that way in the forefoot. I don't really know why they went so low volume, but I don't know if it's obvious on here, but there's just not a lot of width. And then it's very low volume. And again, just like the Balos, it's not stretchy. It doesn't have an accommodating fit. So what's there is there. And if your foot's not going to fit in it, it's not going to be able to accommodate and stretch out to it. What I did like about this shoe is the heel padding and the amount of it. It's just a very mild heel padding on a semi-rigid heel counter. And it's got that nice curve away from the heel. So I think that the heel construction's good. And then it's just too snug in the front. And because it's too snug, it actually limits how much I can use it. Like you said, I don't want to take this on anything for me longer than like 45 minutes. And then the third one, which you also had in your category, was the for Experience Forward. And it was honestly pretty similar to the Mach in a lot of ways but the tightness wasn't all the way through the toes. The tightness was just around my metatarsals. Yeah. So right by the end of those laces, the furthest part of the laces, that was just snug and it didn't open up for me during any of the running that I did in the shoe. And I had the exact same feeling. They did this in a couple of their Experience shoes where they put these two like bulbs. I'll show it for YouTube folks. You can see there's like this little bulbous of padding and they do that on both sides. The idea I think is to grab onto the calcaneus, the heel bone, and like hold it down, but it just felt a little uncomfortable. Or I just knew it was there.
It's a little odd. It was just weird.
Like, yeah, it's like I didn't really need that. And it was, I'd rather not know that the shoe is on. And I felt like that made me aware that I was wearing the shoe. So I think that there's potential here though. Ultra, I think that if they can just like open things back up, like I was putting on other Ultra shoes today and I put on the Escalante and that thing fits like a glove. That thing was amazing. And so I think that if they could adopt some of that back into this shoe, I think it would be even better. Again, I don't think it's that bad of a fit. Little bit more performance oriented, and it's thin, but again, it's snug, and this one doesn't have stretch either. So if you want it for training, you want that accommodating fit, this one's not stretchy. All right, tier 3, what you got?
Yeah, tier 3. So number 7, I have the New Balance Balos. So I've had a kind of a similar experience. I'm not quite as much of a tongue snob, so I can kind of look past some of those things. But it didn't feel, how do I say this, like congruent with the rest of the shoe. Like it just didn't feel like you have a very, very soft compliant foam underfoot there. This is like one of the softest things I've run in, period. Yeah. And I feel like when you look at the fit on it, it's pretty wide, like through the midfoot, and then it kind of tapers off into that forefoot, like you said. And for me, the forefoot wasn't too much of an issue, but it's more so the reason why it's in this category is because like in a static fit, it wasn't actually too bad for me. I actually thought it was kind of nice, but it's how it plays with its platform under it. And when you have a shoe that soft and it's like that wide in the midfoot, I can like feel my foot crashing inwards. And I know we're trying to do this strictly off of the upper, but I feel like that does have play in this experience. And I think just locking up that midfoot a little bit more would be that would improve the shoe quite a bit. And then I think, you probably could increase the volume there a little bit in the forefoot. But in the tongue, I feel like that's kind of a hit and miss. It does make it, I see what they tried to do because it does decrease that volume and it does keep your foot on that platform a little better in comparison to some of the other shoes out there. Like it just literally just like holds you down. Even though it's stretchy, it's still like it's pretty low set, but that's not enough because that is stretchy. So it's like it holds you down there, but then it stretches up and out, and then the midfoot, like medially or laterally, you have some give there. So I feel like if you kind of tune that up a little bit, the shoe could be a lot better. I won't say that it was a miss for me. I think the platform kind of was a miss for me. We're not talking about the shoe, the ride of the shoe, but this was one of those shoes where I wanted to really like it and I just couldn't. But the upper actually wasn't too bad for me, but I think there's some things that we could work on.
It's funny. I feel like David and I, you and I had a very similar experience from a ride perspective with the Balos. Because we're both going through like foot stuff. So the fact that it was such a soft platform didn't match with trying to like rehab foot unhappiness.
Yes.
What else do you have in this tier?
Yeah, so the other one I have in this tier, number 6, is going to be the Hoka Skyward X. And so a good upper. It's honestly, again, this is one of those things where I'm kind of splitting hairs here. But again, I'm in California. It's a pretty thick, kind of warm upper. Granted, it's a premium trainer, but the big thing for me on this one is the instep. It's just like the volume through the midfoot and through that heel there is just like pretty low. It's like I have to like really loosen the laces to get my foot in the shoe. And I'm like, bro, this is fitting pretty close to a mock. Like, what are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish here? Yeah. But the forefoot, the width is pretty good. The volume's pretty good in there. Ironically, that's usually the thing that we kind of nag about a little bit. But there, I actually felt it was pretty good. It was more so the midfoot and kind of that heel fit. And then the sidewall integration, like everything there, I thought was pretty good. I know that's a pretty polarizing topic on this shoe, I think, amongst the group. I didn't really have any issues with the sidewalls, but I know some people did.
Right.
But I think just making that midfoot just have a little bit more room and maybe thinning out that upper just a little bit. But it's not bad. I actually enjoy the Skyward X. Like, it's a good shoe. So just because it's in tier 3 doesn't mean it's a bad shoe.
Cool. All right, I have 2 shoes in my tier 3 as well. The number 7 is the Skyward X as well. And I think what I'll highlight is from a difference perspective between the Mach 6, which was in the lower tier, and this shoe, as you mentioned, David, the forefoot does have a little bit more volume. It was not so snug. And this material has a little bit of stretch to it in comparison to the Mach 6, which is a big deal. But then, the heel padding, I think they still do really well in both of these shoes. I think they pad the semi-rigid counter, and there's a little bit firmer of a counter in the Skyward X as well, but they pad it nicely. And then the tongue is much more padded, but I actually appreciated, maybe unlike you a little bit, I appreciated the snugness through the midfoot because of how high and soft this platform is. Like I want something that's not going to let me fall off the shoe. So I appreciated some of that tightness, but the reason for me that I still want a little bit more forefoot room for like a really slow, well, slow is maybe not the right word. People might come at me and say, I do workouts in that shoe. That's great. For me, I use this for like my recovery and like slow stuff. So I want even more room in that forefoot just to open it up a little bit more. And that was honestly the thing that pulled us back. But I like the comfort of the material. For me, it was not too hot. And I like the amount of padding that it has through the whole system. So I actually like a lot of this upper. Again, the biggest thing is just the kind of the Hoka fit. I would love Hoka to just open their forefoot volume a little bit. And I think if they did that, it would be really good. The other one for me in this category was the Boston 12 from Adidas, which actually I expected to be lower on my list because there's a couple things about this shoe that I think need a lot of work. But the upper fit is actually really good size-wise, like the volume in the forefoot. It took a little bit to open up because it's mildly stretchy. It doesn't have a ton, but it opened up after the first like 10 miles or so. And then it was really nice through the forefoot. What I don't like about this is the lacing system. It's really awkward to try to adjust how much lockdown you have. And so if you're somebody who loosens your laces a lot, it just takes a little extra work. The other thing that I just don't understand why they did it this way is there's absolutely no padding through this heel except a couple of ridges and those like bulbous things like they had in the forward experience from Ultra, except this, you didn't feel these as much, but there's just no padding through this heel. And I felt like they could have added a little bit of comfort through the heel. And I think if they did that, this would be a good upper. If they just adjusted this lacing system, added a little bit of padding, I think that you could get good performance out of this upper still, because it still is a performance trainer. You can do a bunch of workouts in it. And this is a shoe that I put these on before tonight and I forgot how good it feels underfoot. Like it's just a really, really nice platform. So I might actually have to take these out for a run again because they felt so good. But in terms of the upper, I just want to see them, if they change the stuff in the heel and they refine that for the next version and even just go to a more simplistic lacing system, this one would bump up a tier or two for me.
Nice. That was tier 3?
That's my tier 3 for me.
All right.
Got 2 tiers left. So now we're in the like, these are genuinely for us, these have been good uppers. We're no longer like verging on that. I wish there was a couple extra things. These are now good. Good, not great uppers.
Yeah. So we're still wishing for a couple of things.
Yeah, I suppose. We're just being nitpicky. But at this
dead
point...
means dead.
Dead means dead. I'll go first this time. All right,
let's do it.
So my number 5 in this list is the On Cloud Monster Hyper. And this is a super good upper. And for me, as I've been walking through the stuff with my foot over the last year, forefoot volume, I've been harping on it way too much, matters a lot. So this has a lot of volume in the forefoot. It fits really, really well and gives me room for those longer runs. I think that it like fits the purpose really well. The only thing that I want to see changed is the like bagginess of the midfoot. I've got to really lace down the upper through the laces, and my laces come pretty close together when I have to tie it down, which is not typical for me. I think they could take a good amount of material out of the midfoot area and you'd have plenty still. So that's the only adjustment. I think that they've got a really nice thin tongue with some flat laces over the tops. There's no irritation there. It's just the right amount of padding for me on a semi-rigid heel. You're going to find out that's what I like. And so it's a really great fit. I think it just needs to be snugged up a little bit in the midfoot. The other one in this category is probably one of the simplest uppers. And it's like just on the verge of tier 1 for me. It's the Trinusa, and it's just like an engineered mesh upper. It's got a couple layers to it, and I love this upper. I think it fits great. It's one piece. There's nothing fancy. The lacing's pretty simple. It just was a little bit short and tapered at the end just on the lateral side out here. It just tapers down so I could feel it a little bit on my pinky toe. Otherwise, it's great. Like, this is one of my favorite uppers and fits. But it's just that little bit of tapering that put it in its tier 2 spot instead of tier 1.
Nice. All right. So my tier 2, I got 3 shoes in it. We're looking at number 5, Adidas Boston 12. I don't have mine on me right now, but the heel thing was one thing that I had thought about as well. It's a pretty narrow taper. Like, it's basically like the same heel as the Takumi Sen. It's like super,
There's
like it just tapers hard and there's just nothing really in there. So I think I'd like to see that filled in just a little bit more. And maybe make the midfoot just a tad bit wider too, because that thing does lock down pretty hard on the midfoot, and it can be pretty narrow for a lot of people. Forefoot was the fit in the forefoot was great. I thought that was like one of the best forefoot, fits out there. And the material, lightweight, breathable, holds its structure really well. You can use it across a huge variety of uses. So, very happy. Yeah, what's up?
When I think about you and I try to think about what upper makes me remember David, it's you talking about the cellar mesh upper of like the RC something. Like, do you remember that from
the RC 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, that cellar mesh upper. I love it.
Is the RC still around?
I don't even
know. They had
know.
RC 4. I don't know if we didn't get that one.
No. Yeah, so I'm not sure where they're at with that, but
yeah. Huh. Yeah, anyway. You're right though. Yeah. Yeah, those like thin kind of like almost like synthetic-y uppers. I don't mind them. A lot of people don't really like. I mean, they're not the most plush, but they really like lock down and hold well. But anyways, yeah. So Boston 12, number 5. Number 4. This one might be a shock for a lot of people, but Asics Super Blast 2. So great upper. It's really nice. It's just the one thing I wish is it had just a little bit more width in the forefoot there. It kind of tapers off a little bit as it gets up to the front. And so I can feel the sides of my feet a little bit in there. But other than that, it's not like problematic. I can take this 20 miles, and it'd be fine.
Right.
But it's nice. Good fit on the heel. Good padding. Lockdown's great. Tongue's good. Mesh upper is great. Volume in the forefoot, great. Again, very, very good upper. It's just really just the forefoot there. That's really the only thing. And so that's the only thing keeping it from being tier 1 there. Really enjoyed the shoe. And then my number 3, which might come a little bit of a surprise, is the On Cloud Monster Hyper. So very similar thought process between us. I really like the forefoot volume. I like the heel fit, but I did feel like it was a little bit crinkly, like on the tongue and in the midfoot there. You can kind of even just see it like resting from like how many times I've laced it down, how it kind of has that indentation in there. It does kind of pull that material in, and then there's a little bit of reinforcement, this little strip for the viewers, that's reinforced. So like that kind of goes down and it acts like a little sidewall, which is nice, medially and laterally, but that also contributes to some of that crinkling through the midfoot as well. So I think if they just clean that up a little bit, that'd be a tier 1 S tier upper, but it's not quite there. It's just missing the mark. So number 3 on my list there.
Awesome. Well, let's do our tier 1 shoes then. These are the ones that for right now, we wouldn't see anything that would need to change for us to just make this our shoe of choice. And so for me, number 3 is, it's funny, this is like in my top tier and was in your bottom tier, which just shows the individuality, but it's the Triumph 22.
Oh, it's a great upper. Yeah. It's just literally usage for me. Like, yeah.
Which is exactly why I love it. So for me, I'm in Wisconsin. I run at 5 a.m. and we still get a little bit cooler temperatures in the morning, like a hot day, which we complain about the heat. Sorry, David, when it's at like 61 in the morning. And especially sorry, BJ and like everyone else who's in heat, Bach. Anyway, but what I really like about this upper is the form matches the function. So like it's meant to be this kind of like plush premium daily trainer. It's got a plush premium upper that fits me really well. There's a lot of volume through the forefoot and the midfoot, but not too loose where it can lock down well enough through the midfoot. I like the amount of padding. Like I don't like too much padding. And even for a premium shoe, it doesn't have too much for me, either in the heel or the forefoot. And so it fits well. I'm not taking this shoe going fast at all. So the upper matches really well for what I'm doing. So that's my number 3. My number 2 is the Asics Super Blast. And if it's funny, I know what one of the shoes that's in your top tier, And for a reason that you didn't put the Super Blast in your top tier is why I did put it in the top tier, is that it had just enough forefoot volume for me and for my foot. And the upper compared
Well, it was the width.
The width. Okay.
Volume was great.
Volume was fine. It was width for you. Okay. So yeah, I didn't have a width problem. And compared to the first version of this shoe, they made it a slightly more stretchy material. It's super airy, feels nice in the summer. And again, form follows function. And they made it light enough where it can pick up the pace as well with, the bouncy foam that you have underfoot. The tongue has the perfect amount of padding for me. It's thin, but it's got just a little bit there so that you can lace it down nice and snug. It's got flat laces. And so I'm a big fan of the upper for this shoe. I don't need anything different. I think that the previous version was a little too plasticky, and then this just made it feel a little bit more organic and just enough to stretch it out and give you enough space, because I think that the first version was a little bit snug. And then my number one is from Topo Spectre 2. So it's funny, like this would be one of those shoes that like, this is definitely not my favorite shoe on the table. Like I don't get along with the rocker geometry, the posterior bevel's not, and the posterior flare is too much for me. So it doesn't feel great running. But the upper is awesome. So everything from the volume, how much breathability there is, it's a pretty flexible heel and it's padded really well. They always have Topo has an awesome midfoot lockdown, so it locks in really well. So I've got no beef with this upper at all. I think it's great and it's nice and light, but it's robust. Like it's not going to just rip through. So it's got some rigidity to it in a way that's going to make it last. So this is my number one, and it's a great fit. What do you got in your top tier? Well, we know which two.
So
what order?
We got two left. Yeah. So number 2 coming in is the Topo Spectre 2. All the same things you said. It's a good fit. I mean, Topo, I feel like nails their uppers pretty consistently. Just as a company, like they always have a really good midfoot fit. They always have an anatomic toe box, a lot of width, good volume, but not so much that you're swimming around. Heel lockdown's good. Even though it's flexible, it still holds you well. I never feel like it's swimming around. And then like the padding on the tongue, you kind of said it about the Super Blast, but it's like thin, but it's not so thin that you feel the laces that much. Like it's like padded pretty well. Like it's just like that thin padding, just enough to kind of keep the biting, but still be lightweight. So Spectre 2, solid, great on the fit and upper. The other one is kind of like what I was hoping the Mach 6 would fit like, is
totally. That's a great
Asics
point.
needs to try. So it's again lightweight, very simple, very breathable, very comfortable. For how lightweight and breathable it is, the material has no business having this kind of like soft plushness feel to it.
So true.
Yeah, so it's just really comfortable. And then it has kind of a little bit of a lower volume, but it's good. It has just enough in the forefoot where it doesn't give me any irritation. I see what you mean about the forefoot here, but what kind of like what we talked about earlier with the Mach not having stretch, this has just a little bit of stretch to it. Yep. So it just gives me that glove sensation on that forefoot, even though it probably could be a tiny bit wider. Like it just fits my foot well. Mm-hmm. And then it holds down well through the midfoot. And even though there's a tiny bit of stretch, it holds its like structure really well, like turns everything. So padded heel counter, I don't know, holds your heel pretty well. Like I just feel like it holds my foot onto that platform, and it's for how light and breathable it is very comfortable at the same time. So it feels almost like a plush upper, even though it isn't. And so it's just very simple, very breathable, lightweight, keeps your foot on there, does its job. And I really like it for that.
Yep. I think it's another great example of where you have a shoe that doesn't have a super high platform. So you have a little bit ability to just have a very simple upper, because it's not super high and soft. It's a little bit firmer. And so it matched really well. And that, I think that's been one of my reflections on this whole exercise, was trying to piece out the upper from the whole shoe. And I think that is almost a potential problem in shoe design, where if a company decides to just throw on a standard upper onto a shoe without considering what the needs are from the platform that's underneath, you could miss some important features that could secure the foot to the platform in a more optimal way. Based
Totally.
on the type of upper. We also, I don't know if people noticed this, but we didn't go through like what type of exact material that each upper is. David, do you want to talk about why we chose not to do that and what we're even talking about?
There's just so much different nomenclature for the same difference out there. I feel like you look at it, it's like, okay, so you can break it down as simple as, is it mesh? Is it knit? But then you look in there, it's like, is it a woven knit? Is it an engineered knit? Is it an engineered mesh? Is it a woven mesh? Is it a jacquard mesh, double jacquard mesh? Is it textile mesh, like synthetic mesh? Like I feel like there's just so many different names, and you can read these like tech sheets, you can read the marketing pamphlets, you can look at all of it. And I feel like it doesn't really matter what the material is per se. We're just looking at it more from a comfort and usage standpoint on our feet. Like, I feel like it's not quite as cut and clear as like looking at midsole foams, where it's like, okay, you can kind of know what to expect from a PIBA based midsole and from an EVA and from a TPU.
Super critical.
Or yeah, like you kind of have a general idea, but I mean, just because it says whatever engineered mesh, it's like, okay, they're all engineered meshes, tight, thanks.
Yep.
Like you don't really know, it's not all the same.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that I'd like to learn from somebody who knows more about the materials of uppers is what they've learned about durability of different types of these materials. Like, have they found that some in their lab testing, and obviously we have real world testing of the uppers, but unfortunately, I think what's hard for us is that we're usually not getting 300, 500, 600 miles on a pair. So we don't get to see that upper breakdown. Like, I know my sister, every time she runs in a shoe, the upper is actually the first thing to go because her big toe pushes through the end of her shoe like every single time. So we usually don't take shoes that far. That's just a reality of the game that we're in, of testing a lot of shoes. But I think that's something I'd be interested to learn from somebody who knows more on that topic. All right. Well, there are our top fitting shoes, top uppers from 10 to 1 of this selection of shoes. We'd love to hear where you all agree, where you disagree, what your lists are. And so if you want to post your list below, even if you haven't tested all the shoes, you can talk about what shoe fits best for you or what you look for in an upper. We would love to hear about it. So thank you for joining for this episode of the Doctors of Running podcast. You can always be following along with us on Instagram, Facebook, X, or do we do X? I don't even know, or Threads or whatever it is. You can follow us at Doctors of Running. And then if you would be so kind to take some time to leave a review for this podcast, it helps us continue to grow. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to y'all next time.